Picture this, it's the dead of night in 19th century India. A young boy named Mool Shankar is sitting through a Mahashivaratri vigil, watching worshippers offer prayers to an idol of Lord Shiva. Suddenly, he spots a tiny mouse just scampering right over the sacred idol, casually eating the offerings meant for the Supreme Being. Now, for this young boy, it was literally a thunderbolt of a realization. He thought to himself, if this deity cannot even protect itself from a tiny mouse, how on earth can it be the savior of the world? That single, seemingly insignificant little moment sparked a lifelong search for spiritual truth that would, quite literally, change the course of a nation.
That boy grew up to become Swami Dayananda Saraswati. And he wasn't just a philosopher. He was a relentless reformer, a profoundly deep thinker, and a Sanskrit scholar whose ideas sent absolute shockwaves through a deeply traditional society. In this explainer, we're unpacking the life of a man who looked at a flawed world and just decided to completely rewrite the rules.
So, here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the awakening of young Mool Shankar, his back to the Vedas philosophy, his massive quest to reform a nation, the controversies that ultimately sparked his assassination, and finally, his enduring legacy as a maker of modern India. All right, let's jump right into part 1, the awakening of Mool Shankar, a quest for truth. So, that incident with the mouse, it didn't just cause a fleeting moment of doubt. It fundamentally fractured his belief in idol worship and set him on a totally new path. He was born back in 1824 into a wealthy, very traditional Shaivite family in Gujarat, and he always possessed this exceptional memory and a really deep curiosity. Following that 1838 vigil, and then the tragic deaths of his sister and uncle from cholera a bit later, his existential questioning just peaked. When his parents tried to arrange his marriage, he didn't just argue with them, he completely fled his home in 1846. He traded a life of comfort for the incredibly harsh life of a wandering ascetic. And those wanderings finally led him to Mathura in 1860, where he became the disciple of a blind teacher, Swami Dayananda. Actually, for over a decade before even finding his guru, he was out wandering the harsh Himalayas, practicing rigorous yoga and meditation. He was a very strict vegetarian, too. He once noted he was sickened at the mere sight of meat being prepared. And when his time with his guru Vijayananda finally ended, Dayananda made a profound promise. He would devote his entire life to spreading the true knowledge of the Vedas and eliminating ignorance from the world. Moving on to Section 2, back to the Vedas, core philosophy and the Arya Samaj. That promise to his guru absolutely became the bedrock of his life's work. In 1875, he founded the Arya Samaj. Now, this wasn't just your standard religious group. It was a powerful vehicle for massive social and spiritual reform. The primary goal was to revive what he firmly believed were the original, uncorrupted teachings of the ancient Vedas. He essentially wanted to wipe away centuries of what he saw as accumulated superstition and get back to a pure, rational, and scientific understanding of spirituality. He drew a really stark, unapologetic contrast here. On the one hand, he outright rejected orthodox practices like idol worship, he dismissed the Puranas as later corruptions filled with contradictions, and he called astrology an absolute fraud. But on the other hand, we have his Vedic vision. This was a belief in one formless, eternal God named Om. He championed reason, scientific inquiry, and the serious study of the 4 original Vedas over just blind ritual. His theology was actually super structured. He taught that there are essentially 3 eternal entities. First, you have the Supreme Lord, or Paramatma, who is formless and omnipresent. Second, the souls, or Jivatmas, which are uncreated and eternal, moving through cycles of karma and reincarnation based entirely on their own choices. And third, nature, or Prakriti, which is the material cause of the universe. The ultimate goal for the soul is moksha, which is liberation and a state of immense bliss, and he believed you achieve this not through empty rituals, but through righteous conduct and true realization. All right, Section 3, Reforming a Nation, Champion of Equality. You see, Dayananda wasn't content to just sit around and debate theology. He took his spiritual principles and aggressively applied them to the very real, very pressing social issues of 19th century India. And he was wildly progressive for his era. He looked at a heavily stratified society and just declared that all human beings are equally capable. He vehemently opposed caste discrimination based on birth, arguing instead that a person's standing should be based on their character and their knowledge. He fought against untouchability and the practice of child marriage. On top of that, he was a fierce champion of women,
advocating for equal rights, supporting widow remarriage, and insisting that girls receive the exact same educational opportunities as boys.
Everything he did was driven by this one simple but incredibly powerful principle: the world should be made noble. For Dayananda, religion wasn't about appeasing some deity in isolation, it was about serving humanity. He truly believed that the greatest service a person could do was to work for the welfare of others, promoting moral living and justice right here, right now.
Which brings us to Section 4, Controversies and Assassination, the Price of Reform. Now, as you might guess, when you challenge the deeply entrenched beliefs of millions, you are going to make some very powerful enemies. And in his famous book, Satyarth Prakash, Dayananda did not hold back. Driven by his incredibly strict definition of truth, he offered really sharp critiques of almost every major faith of his time. He scrutinized Orthodox Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Sikhism, Jainism, and Buddhism alike, pointing out what he viewed as logical fallacies, immoral stories, or departures from true divine teachings. Basically, he believed accepting truth meant aggressively rejecting what he saw as falsehood, regardless of whose feelings it hurt. This very rigid moral stance is actually what led directly to his final days. In 1883, the Maharaja of Jodhpur invited Dayananda to his palace, eager to become his disciple. But while he was there, Dayananda saw the Maharaja with a dancing girl named Nanhi Jan. True to his character, Dayananda admonished the ruler right then and there, telling him to forsake unethical acts and live nobly. Well, this deeply offended Nanhi Jan, and she decided to exact a terrible revenge. So she bribed Dayananda's cook, a man named Jagannath. On the night of September 29, 1883, the plot was set into motion. The bribed cook served Swami Dayananda his usual nightly glass of milk, but it was completely laced with tiny, lethal pieces of shattered glass. Unaware, Dayananda consumed the deadly drink. He became bedridden for days, suffering excruciating pain, and developing large bleeding sores as the glass tore through his body. Now, what's truly astonishing here is what happened next. Seeing the horrific suffering he caused, the cook Jagannath was overwhelmed with guilt and actually confessed. But instead of demanding his execution, Dayananda forgave his assassin. He even gave the cook a bag of money and told him to flee the kingdom before the Maharaja's men could kill him. A few weeks later, on the morning of Diwali, Swami Dayananda passed away, chanting mantras right to the very end. Let's look at our final section, Maker of Modern India, an Enduring Legacy. His death was a massive tragedy, for sure. But the story absolutely does not end there. In fact, his teachings only grew in power, fundamentally shaping the future of the nation. Dayananda was actually the very first person to give the call for Swaraj, or self-governance, way back in 1876, long before it became the mainstream slogan of the independence movement. His writings directly inspired legendary freedom fighters like Bhagat Singh, who, by the way, attended a school founded on his principles, and Lala Lajpat Rai. His massive push for education resulted in the Dayananda Anglo-Vedic, or DAV, school system, which continues to educate millions today. He sparked a true national awakening centered on self-respect and rational inquiry. Former President of India and philosopher Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan captured this legacy perfectly. He stated that Dayananda ranked highest among the makers of modern India, praising him for being guided by reason while striving to reform society with a clean sweep. Swami Dayananda Saraswati lived a life of just fierce conviction, entirely dedicated to truth as he saw it. He left behind a legacy of educational and social reform that really helped build the foundations of modern India. But as we reflect on his massive fight against discrimination and his push for equal education, we have to ask ourselves, how does modern society still grapple with the very same social inequalities he challenged over a century ago? Think about that and keep exploring.